We are honoured to have the Australian High Commissioner, Mr. Barry O'Farrell-Leo, staying on with us for session 2 and present here. A warm welcome to the esteemed panelists, Chris Reed, Managing Director, Neometals Limited, Jasmeet Kalsi, Director, Manikaran Power Limited, India, Tim White, Trade and Investment Commissioner, South Asia, Austrade, Aman Hans, Consultant, PPP, Niti Aayog, and of course, the moderator, Ravin Mirchandani, who's Chairperson of our Western India chapter. Just a few housekeeping points. So in order to reduce background noise, all microphones will be muted during the webinar, apart from the person speaking. If you have a question, please type that in the chat window and address host and presenter. Please note that we are recording this webinar and the recorded version will be available later. Well, we're running a bit late, so I think without further ado, I would like to welcome the Australian High Commissioner and request him to make his opening remarks for this session. Over to you, High Commissioner.
Thank you. Namaskar to all from the Australian High Commission in India, and thank you again for the opportunity of delivering these remarks. I want to acknowledge all those present, but particularly those from Manikaran Power, Neometals, Niti Aayog, and of course our Western India Chamber, having already acknowledged the broader IACC. As well as, of course, my colleagues from the West Australian Government and Austrade. I have to say that David McCulloch and the other state trade commissioners and the High Commissioner are in regular contact, and we seek to complement each other's work and not compete with each other. I can't emphasise more highly the growing importance and strategic significance of critical minerals to the future economics of both our countries. India's sustained long-term economic development, coupled with the need for resource security, offers significant commercial potential to both Australia and Indian firms. In particular, lithium and iron and other technologies can play a key role. Indeed, India's ambitious renewable energy targets have led to an expansion of its clean energy commitments. At the 4th India Energy Forum on the 26th of October last year, Prime Minister Modi upped India's ambition to achieving 450 gigawatts of renewable energy generation by 2030. The production and uptake of electric vehicles is another area of fast-paced change. Here, the Indian government's National Electric Mobility Mission Plan 2020 serves as a guide to where we can expect India to be headed. The government hopes to boost sales of hybrid and electric vehicles to between 6 to 7 million units each year. Exciting developments on this front include SoftBank-backed ride-hailing firm Ola's plans to establish the world's largest electric scooter manufacturing facility in Tamil Nadu, which once completed will set global records for electric scooter production. And then there's the possibility of Telstra setting up a future manufacturing plants in India, depending on the success of its vehicle sales worldwide. Lithium metal-based battery technologies will form the key component of India's push for the rollout of EV and hybrid vehicles, and Australia and India both stand to gain from the promise of expanding trade in lithium resources. As many of you know better than I, Australia is a reliable and cost-competitive supplier of resources and energy commodities. Australia is also the world's largest producer of lithium and has the second largest lithium reserves globally. And as the market leader in mining, energy, technology and services, METS, our firms contribute to the development of India's own lithium resource development. Australia's resource endowment and our mining capabilities and expertise place us well to support Prime Minister Modi's ambitions around development of India's new economy sectors. The trade in lithium has the backing of the highest levels of the leadership. The historic elevation of our ties in June, the comprehensive strategic partnership between our Prime Ministers, led to the establishment of the India-Australia Joint Working Group on Critical Minerals. The agreement covers cooperation between Australia's Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources and India's own Ministry of Mines. And the joint working group held its inaugural meeting on the 26th of November last. There it agreed an ambitious agenda to accelerate growth in critical minerals trade and investment, including undertaking a demand study to map India's requirements for critical minerals inputs. That study will build upon the information already provided to potential investors and offtake partners in the critical minerals properties prospectus published last year by the Australian government and developed in partnership with our mining industries. And just to pick up a point Jessica Shaw made earlier, I note that Western Australia has its own prospectus and market projections out there as well. In view of the need for us to diversify and strengthen our supply chains and in recognition of India's drive towards self-sufficiency and the truly remarkable growth of its new economy sectors, the timing couldn't be better for the lithium-related trade and investment. COVID-19 has impacted both our economies adversely, but also provided the impetus to develop more resilient and robust supply chains, as well as to collaborate in new areas. And the Australian government's fully committed to driving strong outcomes on lithium trade and investment and on critical minerals and rare earths more broadly. I encourage all present today to get in touch with the Australian Critical Minerals Facilitation Office and my Austrade colleague Tim White, who's also speaking today, to explore how the Australian government can assist you in lithium trade and investment between our two countries. Of course, I'm also happy to discuss how we at the Australian High Commission in New Delhi, as well as our consulate generals across India, can also support your efforts. Finally, I want to again thank the Indo-Australia Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity today and to commend them for their great initiative and the ongoing contribution they make to the ever-deepening Australia-India trade relationship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, High Commissioner, for this comment. It's definitely a very exciting time for the India-Australia partnership, and under your leadership and with your knowledge, we definitely look forward to a new era of bilateral engagement. And with that, we'll move on to the panel discussion. I'd like to introduce the moderator for the panel, and that is Ravin Mirchandani. He's the chairperson of our Western India chapter, an invaluable and a key member of our executive council in the chamber. He's also chairman for Adore and AccuSensus and host of the Energizing India podcast, which focuses on the e-mobility industry in India. The podcast has grown from strength to strength, is a valuable platform. And this session too will be hosted on the Energizing India podcast as well. And with that, it's all yours, Ravin.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pratila. Good afternoon and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The subject for the second panel is lithium, powering a new Australia-India partnership. And this promises to be a very interesting discussion because it mixes not just the need of India to get the critical resources for its electric mobility plans, but also the present geopolitical situation that we find ourselves in the world in, which in many ways has allowed India and Australia to look at each other with much more clarity than they did many years before. Joining me on the panel today are some very esteemed speakers. I welcome Chris Reed, Managing Director of Neo Metals Australia. Chris started in the mining industry in the 1990s and co-founded Reed Resources in 2001. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Notre Dame and a graduate certificate in mineral economics from the WA School of Mines. He is a member of the Australia Institute of Mining and Metallurgy and was the Vice President of the Association of Mining and Exploration Companies. Neo Metals explores and develops mineral projects, and the company focuses on exploration and development of lithium, titanium, vanadium, and other base mineral properties. Along with Chris is Jasmeet Kalsi, Director of Manikaran Power. Mr. Kalsi has been a Director of Finance for Manikaran since 2007, and Manikaran is a Category 1 interstate trade licensing company and a trading member of the India Energy Exchange and trading cum clearing member of the Power Exchange of India Limited. On the panel today is also Tim White, Trade and Investment Commissioner South Asia for Austrade. Tim serves for Austrade in South Asia, in fact, growing Australia's trade and investment links with India and the dynamic South Asia region. He previously managed Austrade's Greater China healthcare team and the West China team. He has extensive experience in international business engagement, trade, and economic policy development. And we welcome Tim, who will be coming to India very shortly. Finally on the panel is also Aman Hunt, who is from Niti Aayog and is a public-private partnership specialist with Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog is the government's premier strategy and policy institution, as we know, chaired by the Indian Prime Minister. Aman is the key architect and active in charge for India's Advanced Chemistry Cell, the ACC Battery Storage Initiative, and is also leading pilot transactions to promote PPPs in other sectors, including railways, ecotourism, and sports stadiums. So welcome, gentlemen, to our panel. Before we officially start, I just want to pose the questions to both Neo Metals as well as Manikaran Power. Do you have an announcement to make before we start the discussion?
Thanks, Ravin. So we're very grateful for an announcement, quite an exciting one. Over to you, Jasmeet and Chris.
Chris, if you'd like to say something, please.
Yeah, sure, Jasmeet. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to say thank you to the Honourable Ambassador Wadhwa and the Honourable High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell and Minister Reddy, who was in previous. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'll be happy to give you an update on the progress of Manikaran and Neo Metals plans to build the first lithium converting plant in India. So there's no sort of formal announcement of any decision, but we are looking at building a 20,000-tonne battery-grade lithium hydroxide facility near Mundra at the moment to supply the future cathode producers in India. So the joint venture partners have materially completed the operating and capital cost estimates. We should have them in a final state by the end of this month. These estimates will then be peer reviewed and modelled to assess the financial feasibility and viability of the project. Then we will complete the full feasibility study, which will be around mid-2021. Thereafter, we will each seek each other's approval from our respective boards to formally incorporate the joint venture in an Indian special purpose vehicle to fund the front-end engineering and design stage of the plant, which generally takes about 18 months. So a final investment decision to fund the construction and operation will be sought once the FEED study has been completed and all the hurdles, we procure access to the sites on acceptable terms and the licenses, project finance, and of course the feedstock and offtake agreements. We are fortunate that we have offtake rights from the Mount Marion lithium project or lithium operation in Western Australia. We were one of the original developers of that project. It is the world's second largest source of hard rock lithium concentrates, produces somewhere between 16 and 17% of the world's lithium units. So, we have a very firm foundation with which to feed the said plant. We'll then look at supplementing that. But if I get back to the timelines, we are looking at finishing the feasibility study mid-21, finishing the FEED study towards the end of 22. These plants typically take 18 to 24 months to build, and then we'll move into the commissioning phase and looking to deliver lithium hydroxide to be able to supply a domestic lithium battery industry in India at that stage. Around 2025 is the current target.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. So, Ravan, over to you for the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. Very exciting to see that you are committed to making an investment in India. On the podcast, in fact, we had 4 CEOs from various parts of the value chain in India: battery manufacturing, EVs, and even raw material providers. And the bet that everyone took was that the first gigafactory would be in India before 2025. So it looks like you're keeping to the time frame for us to be able to beat them. The subject today is lithium powering the new Australia-India relationship. And to set the scene, the government of India has confirmed its commitment to convert a majority of transportation in India to electric mobility within this decade, as the High Commissioner just reminded us. The original target for all new 2- and 3-wheeler vehicle sales to be electric by 2024 and all new vehicle sales to be electric by 2030 has now been reduced to an objective instead of a hard target. And that is largely because the ecosystem for the EV value chain does not yet exist in India. There are still no lithium gigafactories in India, and the cost of lithium batteries remains high, comprising some 60% of the cost of EVs. The underlying reason for this are a lack of infrastructure in India for battery manufacturing and charging. And overcoming this is significantly challenged by the fact that China dominates the lithium value chain very much to its advantage. Global lithium-ion battery manufacturing capacity rose some 54% to 335 gigawatt hours, and China accounts for 74% of this, followed by the United States at 9%, Japan at 8%, South Korea at 4%, and Europe at 3%. India is yet to figure. Global lithium-ion battery manufacturing capacity will further quadruple to 1,340 gigawatts by 2028, led again by China. India, through NITI Aayog, has also announced a major thrust for lithium battery gigafactories in India, having announced incentives to facilitate some 50 gigawatt hours of 5 gigawatt factories of 10 gigawatt capacity each to be operational within the next 5 years. Lithium-ion batteries are made mostly of lithium, followed by graphite, nickel, cobalt, and manganese. Western Australia accounted for 57% of global lithium production 2 years ago, followed by Chile at 19%, China at 9%, and Argentina at 7%. Lithium batteries use other minerals such as cobalt, manganese, and graphite. And in 2018 and 2019, the world's largest producer of cobalt was the Congo, providing a very unstable source of material to the lithium battery industry, to the point where Tesla even fancied moving away from this resource and moving to a different chemistry for its batteries. Australia produces some 6% of the world's manganese and 3% of the world's cobalt. China is the world's largest producer of graphite at 68%, but India has a significant graphite resource capability, but not the technology yet to convert that to be used in EV batteries. So, as is evident, Australia provides a very interesting opportunity for India to achieve lithium battery manufacturing objectives through the stable and assured supply of these resources and of some of the key input materials for India's proposed gigafactories. When juxtaposed to the present geopolitical situation, not just with China dominating the lithium battery industry value chain, but also the reality that both India and Australia perhaps finally need to see each other with far greater clarity, both as economic and strategic partners with similar common underlying interests in the Indian Ocean region, 2021 and the lithium battery industry both present an opportunity for the elephant and the kangaroo to dance more closely together. Today's subject, therefore, is very promising for us to explore. And my first question is to the Honourable High Commissioner. High Commissioner Vary, in your opinion, what needs to be done to leverage the present geopolitical climate that we face to cement a stronger relationship between India and Australia, particularly in the context that the FTA has taken so long to be signed?
Well, Rowan, I think we need to start with the point of making out that before last year, that terrible year, our trade had doubled over the previous 5 years. So what we want to do is continue that trajectory heading in the right direction. And, you know, you've heard my background. It's not diplomatic, but so what I'm about to say may not be as nuanced as it should be. But I think the major lessons we've had over the past 12 months is about the reliability and the trustworthiness of whether customers, whether suppliers, or indeed, I would say, whether allies. And I think that Ravin, the question that you asked as to how do we get this relationship together has already started to happen. It started to happen certainly in a geostrategic sense over the past 12 months, and that's evidenced by the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and the slew of agreements, many of which were in the defence, intelligence and other areas, but also included the work we're doing through the Quad in relation to critical supply chains about trying to ensure that we not only diversify suppliers, but also diversify manufacturing. And what we're seeing is the Indian government setting out high ambitions for its economic aspirations within India. And it's clear to me, sitting here as the Australian High Commissioner, that we have many elements that are able to assist India to achieve those ambitions. And, the one I bore people tirelessly on is the electrical vehicle and the battery storage industries, which India have set themselves goals. And NITI Aayog, for our Australian listeners, is the Productivity Commission on steroids. They do great work. They've set great ambitions. And if they only achieve half the ambitions they do they set out to achieve in the EV and battery storage industry, the market for Australia's critical minerals and rare earths, even if we only get a small fraction of this very big market, will be of substantial benefit to Australia.
Thanks for that. I'd like to push you just a little bit further on that subject with a follow-up question. In your opinion, how do you think it can benefit from Australia to overcome its present disadvantages in the lithium battery manufacturing industry sector, in particular with reference to the dominance that China has in the sector and its ability to use it to its advantage continuously?
Well, as we know, in many sectors, probably the only nation that can balance that equation is India. And we've seen that particularly in the telecommunications sector over the last number of years, including last year, where significant foreign direct investment came into India's telco sector. Now, when it comes to global telecommunications environments, there's no doubt that India is recognised worldwide as the only counterbalance that can assist to ensuring that the telecommunications environment and ecosystem is free, open, and not dominated by authoritarian approaches. So I think the fact that India has set itself high ambitions, the fact that, as in other sectors, India is determined to deliver on those ambitions for local domestic reasons, provides opportunities for suppliers to assist, and we'll be working hard along with Austrade, along with state and territory trade commissioners, to ensure that Australian providers of those goods also get access to the market. And the closeness of the relationship that saw Dr. Jaishankar, India's External Affairs Minister, say that it was one of the highlights of his year in an interview with the Lowy Institute a month or two ago. I think augurs well for our aspirations. Yes, we've struggled in the past with closer economic cooperation agreements, but importantly in June, both Prime Ministers put that into the CSP as well, that we would re-engage on it. In the meantime, we're seeing progress made in a number of areas, not just in agricultural sectors, but in terms of other products that are coming into the Indian markets. So I do have optimism, not only about what we're talking about in this session, but more broadly for the economic and trade relationship with India. And as Minister Reddy said in the earlier session, the opportunities for investment into India, particularly through our superannuation funds, holds attractions for us from India. And I think that will also help ease some of those obstacles we've faced in the past with our trade and economic relationship.
Thank you very much for that. I think the fact that India can source its lithium, cobalt, as well as manganese, and there's a significant graphite resource here, means that India has a stable supply partner and an opportunity to develop a relationship that hasn't really been explored so well in the past. We'll stay with that subject, and I'll come to Tim from Austrade. Tim, you have significant experience both in the resources sector as well as on the very subject we've been discussing right now, which is China and India. and the stability of supply chains to support India growth. In your opinion, what sets Australia apart as a preferred partner for these critical mineral supplies and also for mineral investments into India?
Thank you, Ravin, and thanks to our colleagues at IACC for hosting this session. And just want to start by acknowledging Ambassador Wadhwa and, of course, our High Commissioner. It's great to be with you all. And I think, to the question that you posed, Ravin, we've heard a little bit already about Australia's strengths in this sector, but there are a number of elements to it. One, of course, is that we've got among the world's largest reserves of critical minerals, including lithium. We're the largest global producer of lithium, about 55% last year. We know that COVID had a dampening impact on project investment and development, not just in Australia, but in a number of countries. But we do expect that the sector will rebound very strongly in the years ahead. And of course, Australia is also becoming a major producer of lithium hydroxide, which of course is a very valuable product and more valuable in many ways than spodumene concentrate. So we're moving along the value chain and really looking to drive capability beyond just digging the hard rock out of the ground. And of course, WA is leading that effort. And further on that point, I guess what I'd say is I think Australia really has a competitive edge in producing battery-grade lithium, and that's because of our really rich spodumene resources. We know that hard rock mining projects can be scaled up significantly more quickly than brine projects. We know that spodumene has a higher lithium content compared to brine projects and makes for quicker and simpler beneficiation. So those factors are to Australia's advantage as well. And I guess the third point I'd make and the broader issue is that we have, a world-class mining ecosystem. And of course, Australia and India have shared a very close partnership in the mining sector for a number of years, built largely around our connections in METS. So Australia is a world leader in METS, and we're working with Indian partners to further boost productivity in the Indian mining sector as well. Beyond that, in Australia, we've got publicly funded science agencies such as Geoscience Australia that provide really high quality and accessible geosurvey data. We have a strong R&D sector that sits behind what our mining companies do, and that's through our cooperative research centres. It's through generous R&D tax incentive scheme that companies can access to conduct their R&D. And as I said earlier, sitting around the miners themselves is a really high quality METS sector. It's a high skilled workforce. 5 of the top 10 universities globally for mining engineering, for example, are in Australia, and a number of them in WA. And the final point I'd make, I guess, because we know that whether it's lithium or other minerals, there's a really strong focus on ethical and sustainable mining. That's another area where Australia is a global leader, whether it's around safety, ethical mining practices or environmental standards. We've been a leader in that area, and we continue to work with partners around the world, including India, on setting international standards in that area as well. So I think there are a few of the reasons why Australia is a high quality partner. And of course, we know that India has many strengths as well, and we're very much looking forward to making the most of the complementarity we've got in this sector. As I said, the partnership in many ways has been built around, in the mining sector, around METS. And now, as the High Commissioner has outlined, at the highest levels of both governments, we have a very strong focus on building this critical minerals partnership, and we're looking forward to working closely with Indian partners on that.
Thank you very much for that, Tim. It'll be actually quite exciting to see the two resource sectors come together. There's been promising this for the last 20 years, and I think lithium and the opportunity to be able to bring raw materials for a lithium refinery in India might underpin a change in that relationship. I'll come now to Aman from the NITI Aayog to stay with a similar theme to you, Aman, but from the Indian perspective. What do you think needs to be done or can be done to help India achieve its energy storage and EV independence objectives. So the question really is, we are going down that road today, but we only have cell packing plants, and all of the cells come from different countries imported, mostly, as we know, from China. Now we have this opportunity for a lithium refinery in India. NITI Aayog has a plan for 5 gigafactories in the next 3 or 4 years. This is a crucial linchpin to get there. What more, in your opinion, needs to be done, Aman?
Yeah, thank you, Ravin. I'll just start by first giving a background of what the NITI Aayog is up to on the cell manufacturing front, and then we'll come to the EV and the solar penetration, solar energy and renewable, emphasis on the renewable. So one of the major impediments of increasing the renewable energy penetration in India beyond the 20-25% threshold at the grid level, and the EV penetration, apart from the support infrastructure that we talk about, EV penetration, has been the high upfront cost on the EV side, which primarily comprises up to 40% of the cost is comprised of the cells and the battery. And while on the RE side, it's been how we can have firm power, firm offtakes. Both these and how the effective cost of firm power from an RE, variable RE source, can be lowered. Now, both these facets of clean energy require cell is the basic building block. The advanced cells are the basic building blocks. And as of now, India, as you rightly mentioned, is completely import dependent on cells, though there are battery pack packaging which has already started happening, but no cells are being manufactured. The country is completely import dependent. In order to tap into these two new areas and leap into the future of energy transition, the government, through NITI Aayog, being the nodal body, emphasized upon how we can start the cell manufacturing in India. So there has been this program which you highlighted, whereby, and this has already been in principle been approved by the cabinet. The budget has been first tranche of the budget has already been announced by the Union Cabinet of India. It's called the Performance Linked Incentive Scheme. And in that, the first category is the advanced chemistry cells, whereby the government is planning to incentivize up to 50 gigawatt hour of cell manufacturing in the country. Now, one of the key criteria, I'll just share the key features of this program, and then we'll come to how it impacts the EV and the RE penetration. So the minimum scale for setting up a gigafactory in India will be 5 gigawatt hour. It can go to 20 gigawatt hour per beneficiary firm. And any entity, irrespective of the technology background, experience of manufacturing cells, till the time you have the financial capacity in terms of network, can participate in this competitive and transparent procedure and apply for a capacity and then install, make the requisite investments on ground. And once the production starts, the government will start giving cash subsidy, which is linked to actual sales of the cell, in order to obviously enhance and boost investors' confidence for the first time. And this is the only scheme and only sector whereby a sovereign agreement shall be entered into for a period of 10 years, so that risks like change of law, force majeures, terminations, government defaults, all these are mitigated. So apart from that, the second criteria is of domestic value addition, where the government has clearly laid down a policy that higher the domestic value addition, higher will be the subsidy payout. Now, of course, an important thing to reckon is that currently in India, we don't have any proven reserves of lithium and all these rare earth metals which are used in cell manufacturing. And hence, in order to increase the value addition under this program, all the companies will start importing, and that is these rare earth metals from outside, though the substantial part of the value addition shall happen in India. Now, obviously, the companies shall be incentivized more under this program if the processing is also of these rare earth metals happens in India, because the cash subsidy being offered under this program is up to 100% of the value addition of the cell. So it's if, for example, if the cash subsidy is $30 per kilowatt hour, though the cash subsidy has been capped at 20% of the cell price, the effective subsidy that shall be given to the manufacturer will be prorated basis the value capture. And hence, I encourage Australian firms to actually set up the mineral processing plants also in India, because it will be incentivized under this program. Not just mineral processing plants, even the urban mining. A lot of companies within India which are planning for urban mining have come forward and are willing to participate under this program, because the aim is to facilitate investment into the entire ecosystem and not just make India the mere assembly for cells in the global market. Now, after we have, please.
I was actually going to go with a follow-up question on that, Aman, because you've made a very interesting thing. A number of people who, when we talk on the podcast, make a very interesting comment, and that is that India has a lot more lithium than people realize it does, and it's sitting in everyone's car and everyone's offices because it's in the mobile phone, and we don't have a second life policy or a recycle policy. And as part of NITI Aayog, is this something that you're looking at? Because processing plants will also need to be part of this whole ecosystem for recycling the lithium, which today gets sent to landfill.
Yeah, very much. So Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Government of India has already started working on, and the draft is there in the public domain. And NITI Aayog and I'm very much working on that very policy of how to incentivize or how to mandate or how to get it in the entire policy framework, the key regulations for recycling of battery, whether it should be a mandatory provision or whether there should be a penal provision for that, so on and so forth, whether there should be a short buyback. All these things are being deliberated currently.
The other point you made, which is very interesting, is energy firming of renewable energy. And in some ways, Australia is a little bit ahead because Australia has come out with the hydrogen policy or the hydrogen strategy for Australia. And hydrogen is a major element to firm renewable energy because you won't need expensive lithium-ion batteries, but you can actually convert to a hydrogen molecule. Australia will be a major player in global hydrogen exports as a result. Is NITI Aayog considering a hydrogen strategy in conjunction with a lithium battery manufacturing strategy?
So I would say that is still in nascent stage where a lot of deliberation and is still taking place. Though the lithium-ion program for the advanced chemistry cell program pertaining to manufacturing of these advanced cells is at a very advanced stage and should be announced by the government, and the bid documents should be out, I think, in a couple of months now. The hydrogen, the entire hydrogen ecosystem and the framework which the government wants to implement for promoting the hydrogen economy, I guess will still take some time.
Okay, one last question to you then on this subject, and that is that India signed a preferential supply agreement for lithium with a country in Latin America. Do you foresee, with Bolivia, that's right, do you foresee something like that with Australia, where India becomes a strategic partner and has a guaranteed supply chain that is stable, that India knows that it can build its ambitions on?
I'm sure, there is this Indian entity called Kabil, which has been working on sourcing of rare earth metals from Latin America. And though under this program, another important thing to reckon is that the government shall be, on the raw material side, shall be a mere facilitator, while the onus and of establishing the entire supply chain from the raw material to manufacturing of the components is vests with the potential investor who will be participating under this program. So there are certain big entities which will be entering into India after this program is announced, which have established global supply chains. Though in order to mitigate the risk, yes, I feel the government should enter into a similar kind of a framework with Western Australia also.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Then turning to Chris, please, from Neometals. We were hoping, Chris, today that you would have an announcement to make in terms of setting up a lithium refinery, but it's quite encouraging to see that you are going down the very mature end of the process of being able to do that. India is a difficult country, as has been mentioned a few times, in terms of of investments being made here and ease of doing business. In your experience, what are the challenges that continue to be roadblocks between India and Australia in terms of energy and energy storage technology or raw materials import to impact the long-term relationship between the two countries?
Thank you very much, Robin. I think really we're just in the evaluation stage, so I don't have any direct operational experience in dealing with the two. In terms of the expenses that we incur on the ground and over here, Manikaran and Neometals each pick up their domestic costs and then we just invoice for the balances. So I think in terms of what it's in terms of energy or energy storage technology, Australia doesn't have a massive amount of that. We don't have a domestic battery. We are really more of a dig it and ship it. Almost 100%, 95% of the spodumene comes out of Australia, goes up to China for conversion. So they've got a monopoly on that, and they're responsible for 70 to 80% of the global lithium trade. In terms of, we do have the resources down here. I think looking forward, I think the transparency around the taxation, the regulatory and fiscal regimes definitely could use some work for both sides to harmonise it. One of the things we do find is the shipping costs to the west coast of India are twice the cost to ship it to Shanghai, even though it's much closer. It's just not a big trunk route. So that puts us at a slight disadvantage, but nothing we can't overcome.
So on the subject that you were talking about, China dominating some 70% of the global lithium trade, and of course Australia's largest customer for the product, we have America as the second largest producer, and then Europe coming up to compete with Japan and Korea. Your investment in India then is a punt, isn't it? It's a hope that India will be able to be successful in its own objectives for electric mobility and renewable energy storage. How can I put this diplomatically? How confident are you that India will be able to achieve this and not miss the boat as it did with electronics and solar over the last 20 years? Yeah,
look, I think it gets back to having a look at what the competitive landscape amongst countries is, and unfortunately India and Australia probably aren't as proactive as some of the less developed countries. We do have, look, there are many advantages. Obviously, we've got a fantastic rule of law. It's a very safe place to do business, that sort of stuff. In terms of we're looking at the Adani Industrial Zone at Mundra. So, you've got one of the world's most, I would say that's a state-of-the-art port facility that Adani run there. There's a couple of power stations, all the really necessary ingredients. We obviously gas we'll have to have a look at, but everything else, leads us that is the most technically feasible. We will have to, however, agree on terms before we finally decide to put it to Adani. There are other sites in Gujarat that are sort of plans B and C. But from where we sit, there's no technical roadblocks for India. And in terms of being a first mover into somewhere that's 1/5 or 1/6 of the world's population have a massive use of portable energy storage, whether that be from consumer electronics through to the transportation and perhaps stationary energy storage. is more important long term. I mean, these are 20, 25-year plants. So, we're looking to, get to a final investment decision in 2022. I expect that our partners, Manakaran, will make more headway. They've certainly been doing a fantastic job so far liaising with the government. And, yeah, look, I mean, we're considering there as opposed to China, obviously. I mean, India and Australia, one thing we've got in common, unfortunately, at the moment, is we're not quite seeing eye to eye with some of our customers, and we do value there is a real opportunity there, and I think we'll get there.
It's certainly the hope of most of the members of the Auscham in India that the relationship will come closer as a result of this. Jasmeet, coming to you, we had the Minister from Andhra Pradesh in the first session, and you've announced that you're looking at Gujarat, the port of Mundra, for your investment. Three of the major announcements for gigafactory projects in India, which is Suzuki as well as Tata Chemicals, and potentially eventually the Exide Lertanoche joint venture Nextcharge to set up gigafactories in India will be in Gujarat. What is the reason that you had chosen Mundra and Gujarat for the project and not Andhra Pradesh, which usually tends to be much more promising in its outlook for new investment, particularly in electric vehicle infrastructure?
So it is not that we did not choose Andhra Pradesh. We prefer to have our presence in Gujarat, because as Chris mentioned, we last year we visited Mundra, and the port is world class. The facilities there are world class. The government there is quite proactive. We've met a few government officials there, and the kind of feedback and the kind of response we've got from them is definitely very different from what we get when we visit other places in the country. Having said that, there is availability of reagents and availability of other materials in Gujarat is quite well compared to what we find in other areas. Gas, which is also a critical component for our refinery, is very easily available, and we can also import it from the port if required in the near future. So these are some of the basic reasons which made us decide on Mundra and not some other state. Primarily, as I said, the main reason was also, as I mentioned, gas. Gas is something which is very, very critical, and that's very freely available there.
So it does look like in many ways that Gujarat will become the lithium-ion battery manufacturing hub. If you are going to be based there, as well as the three of the new gigafactories coming will be based there. So that's encouraging. That sort of hub usually creates some economies of scale for the entire industry, which India should be able to leverage. You focusing on a refinery for lithium hydroxide, so the lithium-ion battery requires many other input materials as well, as we said, cobalt, manganese. Are you looking at processing any of the other input materials for future gigafactories?
So right now we're focusing on the hydroxide part of it. We have had a lot of discussions about how to go ahead with this, and our vision on this is a long-term vision. We do not see that there are lots of ups and downs in the market. Prices of hydroxide going up and down, prices of raw material going up and down. But we've kept a steady vision on hydroxide as of now. The other materials, if this, when this plant goes upstream and when once we're successful in producing battery grade lithium hydroxide, I think me and Chris, both of us, all of us can sit together and decide on the future course of the other materials if required.
Thank you for that. One more question then to you, Jasmeet. It's exciting that both your companies are looking at setting up this lithium refinery in India. It will be the first one. But the question that is the pink elephant in the room in some ways is, why has it taken so long? Minister Gadkari has been talking about EV for the last 5 years. In Niti Aayog, it's a very aggressive plan. Why has it taken so long for such an investment to come about?
So the process, in two parts, I would like to answer this in two parts. So the first part is, if you talk about our refinery, Chris has a vast experience in understanding the market much more than I have. And what we've gathered from discussions with them is that there have been instances of people rushing into setting up refineries, and producing battery grade lithium is something which is very, very, very technical and very difficult to do. And those refineries have ultimately had to have additional investments and a lot of losses till the time they could, come out with battery grade lithium. But if you talk about the overall perspective as to why, there is such a delay, I don't think there is a delay. I think we're right on track. We, all of us, anybody who's interested in this sector, I think 2025 is when all the predictions around the world say that prices for hydroxide carbonate will be at their peak, and we are on stream to meet that particular target.
A profitable start then to the venture. Good luck with that. We have a couple more minutes, so I'll ask Tim a question, Tim from Austrade, and this has to do with return trade. Is take it and ship it of the lithium coming to India, and then India looking to try and be perhaps to start with a tier 2 level battery manufacturer for lithium-ion batteries. Australia is not a very big EV market or energy storage market at the moment, but do you see the potential for batteries made in India to be exported to Australia? Because I assume most of the batteries in Australia today would come either from China or from one of Tesla's gigafactories, and Tesla itself has a large gigafactory in China. So do we see this as an opportunity for Indian investors to be able to look eastwards towards Australia for export of lithium-ion batteries?
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Ravan. Look, I think, I know a bit less about what's happening in terms of, those export opportunities out of India and into Australia, but what I would say is clearly, Australia's got a very strong policy on developing renewables, and I think you're right that we're conscious of the scale of the market that we have. We have certain strengths in, obviously, on the mining side and on processing in certain areas, but it's unlikely we'll become a major battery producer. So I guess in principle I would say yes, it's certainly an opportunity, and it's the kind of thing that we're looking to explore under that joint working group structure that the High Commissioner mentioned, looking to really find ways where we on the government side can support commercial partnerships that are beneficial for both sides. So that could include offtake agreements, from Australian providers supplying into India. It could include, investments in both directions, which we've discussed today. And of course, there is that export opportunity out of India in the medium term. And obviously we've heard as well from other colleagues today about the fact that there's some way to go for India to develop its battery producing capacity, but when that does happen, I think that's certainly something that we can continue talking about.
Thank you very much, Tim. Folks, we don't have any questions that have come from the participants to the panel, so given the interest to keep to time, we will end the panel here. It's been an interesting discussion. It's really quite exciting to see the opportunity for lithium to be the linchpin in changing the relationship between Australia and India, and the fact that 2021 gives us a strange geopolitical situation that allows the two countries to look at each other with much more clarity than we did before. Stable governments on both sides allow for that to be cemented even further. It's exciting to see that a lithium refinery to make the cathode material is likely to be in India in the next 3 or 4 years. I'm sure that's going to be music to the ears of the 3 or 4 gigafactory projects that have been announced. And we look forward both as an industry and also as the AusCham in India to see this investment become a success, and for electric vehicle mobility and lithium-ion battery storage to be something that brings the two economies close together. Thank you very much for making the time for this panel, and back to you now, Patila.
Thank you very much, Ravan. This is a really interesting discussion, which I'm sure our members and others as well, companies in India and Australia attending, would have found it extremely insightful. And just to say that this will also be edited as a podcast and will be available, so it will go to a wider audience. And thanks to Adore and Ravan for that. I will now hand over to David for the closing comments.
Thank you, Patila. There's not much that I can add, but I may have disappeared.
Yes, we cannot see you, David, but we can definitely hear you. And I must say thank you to the Government of Western Australia for partnering with us, to Infosys for the tech support, and adore and energizing India for the powered task. So thank you, and thanks very much to the High Commissioner and all the panelists. Yes, David, it's all yours. You can take at least 3 minutes.
Thanks, Prachulla. Look, I'm not sure what happened there, but there's not much that I can add about Western Australia and Australia's capabilities that hasn't already been provided by your guest Australian speakers on this forum. The only thing I would like to add, one is a little bit of repetition from my closing remarks earlier, and that is that we have an office in Nariman Point, Mumbai, that's been there for 24 years. I was actually involved in setting that up in a previous life. But I also want to emphasise that the West Australian Government has a very, very strong commitment to the whole of the battery material space, and in partnership with the federal government, the Australian government, they're ploughing an awful lot of money into the research side of it. As others have mentioned, we have a fairly broad cross-section of all the key materials, and therefore, if any of your audience have a particular interest, not just on the lithium side, but on the other material side, then I would very much like them to contact Banu in our Mumbai office, or failing that, any of the Austrade posts. But thank you for an excellent forum, and I think probably the lithium relationship is something that will hopefully expand the trade relationship between Western Australia and India.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And it's been an absolute pleasure having all of you with us today. On behalf of the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce and the Government of Western Australia, thank you for participating in this virtual summit. And our Resources and METS forum will move on with their next initiative. So for those of you who are keen in this space, we'll be coming out with the next one soon. Have a great day, and bye from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate it.